Welcome to Horns Eye Studios for another episode of 666 Seconds of Murder. That means each one of these videos is less than 666 seconds or 11 minutes and 6 seconds. So let's get to it. I've got a really gruesome one for you tonight. You may have heard of this story, talking about body parts found in a Brooklyn freezer. It is a gruesome one for sure. But remember, with all these videos, these are for informational purposes only. These are my opinions, my speculation. I'm not saying anybody's guilty of anything. We're just talking about a true crime case that interests us. So I wanted to report on this bizarre case. I actually had a commenter yesterday bring this up, and I checked it out, and I thought it was interesting. She suggested that I do a video on it. So I'm doing a video on it. This case happened in Brooklyn, New York. And ironically, Brooklyn, New York is currently in the top 10 cities listening to the Murder Metal Mayhem podcast. So I don't know what that says about our listeners here, but it makes you wonder. Definitely no surprise that something like this would happen in a big city, but it was just ironic. Now, it was just last week that the police responded to a third-floor Flatbush apartment on Nostrand Avenue there in Brooklyn when a Crime Stopper tip came in about a suspected dead body that was expected to be stored in a freezer. Sounds like a repeat of Jeffrey Dahmer, if you ask me. And it's no surprise that some of the neighbors drew that comparison when the media came there to do interviews. Now, the police found the refrigerator taped shut and ended up arresting the resident of the apartment, Heather Steins, when she refused to let them at the refrigerator, and she became combative and they had to remove her from the scene. And inside the refrigerator, the police found a man's severed head and various body parts stored in black plastic bags. There was some ice in there in the freezer, but I'm sure the smell had to just be absolutely horrible. Now, Heather was arrested for outstanding warrants while police were trying to figure out what in the heck is going on. Her bail is set at $50,000, which seems a little low, but I'll get to that. She claimed that her husband, Nicholas McGee, killed a drug dealer in September, and that dealer was Kosheen Gelzer over a drug deal gone bad. Now, Gelzer is a 39-year-old man. At the time of me making this video, they were able to identify him due to a distinctive tattoo. So they did positively identify him. 44-year-old Heather Steins was arrested on the warrants and concealment of a corpse. She said that her husband was currently in jail in Chesapeake, Virginia, apparently there for ID fraud charges. Strangely, she would allow Kosheen to stay at her apartment prior to this event, so something obviously changed with that. Now, Nicholas McGee hasn't been officially tied to this body, but since he's already in jail, the police can get to the bottom of it and do their investigation into the allegations raised by the tenant. So we'll have to see. Now, the neighbors told the New York Post reporter that everyone in the building knew that Kosheen had gone into that apartment and never came out. They said that if she let anyone into the apartment, they were never allowed to go into the kitchen where that freezer was. Even the building superintendent was not allowed into the kitchen, apparently. I'm sure the smell of the body had to be just unbelievable since that had been in the freezer for 5 months. I mean, that's just absolutely disgusting. Reminds me of the reports that had come in the wake of the Jeffrey Dahmer arrest in Milwaukee of the neighbors saying the smell was just horrendous. Apparently, Heather and her husband had lived in the apartment for 6 years. She was originally from Kentucky, according to a neighbor. Heather was taken to a Brookdale hospital for a psychiatric evaluation. There was a caseworker who made regular visits to the apartment. I'm not quite sure what she was a caseworker for, if it was some sort of, assistance, or was she maybe on, some sort of court custody issue. Really not sure. But apparently she had just been there. And the neighbor said, though, typically when she showed up, she just poked her head into the apartment, and then that was about the extent of the visit. But she had just been there. A memorial had been set up in the lobby of the building for Cauchine with candles and cards left by the tenant. And I'm not saying the fact that this guy was a drug dealer meant that his life didn't matter, but I did find it interesting that many people in the building felt bad enough about him to put up a memorial. But, again, I'm not disparaging him because of being a drug dealer. I just found it interesting that many people in the apartment would have set up the memorial for him. No one has been charged in the murder of Cauchine Gelzer at this point, but that could change once the police are done doing their investigation. So what do you guys think about this? I mean, it's definitely a gruesome case, and as more information comes in, I'll provide an update. But I want to say thanks again to that person that left the comment for providing the tip to do a video on this. I thought it was an interesting case. Rather gruesome, though. I do want to say thank you to the members of the Horn Tie Club. You guys are awesome. I really appreciate that. The membership is just $1.99, so if that's something that interests you, you can check that out. There's some perks involved with it. I did a video that explains what they are, so you can find out that information if you're interested. If you like what I do, you might like the Murder Metal Mayhem podcast. That's a weekly podcast that I do with two other hosts. Sometimes we have additional people come on. It's a crazy show. We talk true crime, we talk heavy metal, and it's certainly not for everybody. But if you're interested, you can go to murdermetalmayhem.com and find out more information, and you can listen on any podcast platform. Well, thanks again for checking out another episode of 666 Seconds of Murder, and I'll see you next time.